Hello everyone, welcome to the Psychology of Dating podcast. You are listening to Nadine Newkirk. I'm both a clinical psychologist and a dating coach. For today's episode, I'm going to be talking all about emotion regulation. And this is a whole module that is featured in DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, and really important and very applicable to dating. Before we jump into that, I want to remind you that you can access my free guide called Top 3 Mindset Shifts in Dating. If you notice that your dating problems seem to be on repeat, that you've been talking about the same issues 6 months ago, a few years ago, 10 years ago, and it just feels like you're looping Groundhog Day through these issues, chances are your brain has some very well-worn roots of unhelpful beliefs, of things it tells you about dating. And these thoughts can be just taken as facts. And the first step to be able to increase mental flexibility, to open up possibilities in dating, is to look at the mindset. And this guide walks you through 3 common unhelpful beliefs that I've seen when I'm seeing people for dating coaching or psychology sessions. So access that one in the episode show notes. Okay, what is emotion regulation? First of all, what I'll do is I'll explain what emotion dysregulation is. So this is where your emotions have taken over. They have hijacked the brain, and if you've ever seen that movie Inside Out, you know, where the different emotions are taking kind of the controls of the little girl's brain, that's what it feels like. Whatever mood or emotion, angry, sad, happy, fearful, it takes control of the mind and you start to think from that emotion. So if I'm feeling anxious, my thoughts will be worst case threat based. If I'm feeling excited, my thoughts will be optimistic, hopeful. And whatever emotion I'm feeling, I'll get these thought patterns, I'll get these strong sensations in the body. So it could be fluttering of a heart, it could be heat in my cheeks, whatever emotion it is will have different sensations. And then I'll get these strong urges to do a certain behavior. If I'm excited, I might have the urge to do lots of things. I have energy, I have the urge to call someone, to get out, to make plans. If I'm feeling anxious, the urge is to hyper-focus on a perceived threat. Continuously check the phone for that message at work. You're waiting for that person who you've been dating to text back and you can't stop checking the phone. It feels very compulsive. And with emotion dysregulation, you might experience that your emotions feel very heightened. So one text message might create 100% really intense sensation of anxiety in the body, and it floods you, and maybe it takes a long time for that emotion to come back down, for you to come back to baseline, to feel neutral, to feel calm again. Or you might find that your emotions shut down. If you're dysregulated, you can have really intense kind of bubbling emotions, but you can also have ones where you feel numb, dissociative, disconnected from your body. And if you have emotion dysregulation, you can also have pile-up of different emotions. So if you feel guilt one moment that maybe you told a white lie to someone you're dating, but you're more vulnerable to emotions at this time and the guilt is really intense for you and it takes a while to come back to baseline, chances are there's going to be another thought or another event that triggers a different emotion before that guilt has been able to come down. So maybe you're feeling guilt and then you look at your calendar and see that you've got so much work and how are you going to fit any more dates and you're never going to find someone. And then you're not only feeling guilt, but you're feeling depressed or hopeless. And you get these pile up of different layers of emotions and it can feel really overwhelming. It can feel too much to handle. And when we're dysregulated, that's where people tend to switch between having lots of energy, kind of motivated for dating, go on heaps and heaps of dates, or download the app, and then they get overwhelmed and they might pull back and suddenly stop dating, and it's this stop-start type of situation. It can also lead people to be more vulnerable in dating, because when you jump into the dating pool, there's all sorts of people with different backgrounds, different emotional maturity, different motivations, or things that they're wanting to get out of dating. And it is very, very common and normal to meet people who aren't a good match and who have difficult emotions triggered from dating. And if we have a nervous system that's dysregulated and we feel like we can't get a hold of our emotions, they're just kind of taking control, they're firing at any moment, it's overwhelming, it can be really scary to go into dating. So learning how to regulate emotions, this is the ability to notice the emotion that's there, be able to self-soothe or take action that is helpful based on this emotion, and to ride that wave of emotion till it comes to baseline without creating more distress or more suffering, without judging the emotion or needing to frantically try and get rid of it, but being able to ride that wave and help emotions actually run their natural course. And generally, they tend to last less long when we don't react to them. So they've done some studies on what is an emotion. It's like a chemical reaction in the body. It's a little messenger. It tells our nervous system, it tells our brain, different things that we should do or watch out for. It helps us survive threats. If I feel fear when I see a tiger, that is great. If I feel guilt when I've lied to someone I'm dating, that's helpful. That tells me that I've stepped out of line of my values. Emotion researchers have looked at how long does an emotion actually last for if we don't prolong it by judging it, by trying to frantically get rid of it. How long would it actually last in the body? And they've shown the average is 90 seconds. 90 seconds. So that isn't very long. But the thing is that most of us prolong our emotions because we might feel guilt, for example, and then we think, oh my God, I feel so guilty. What have I done? I'm a bad person. We bring up all these memories of why we're such a bad person, or we ruminate and we go over and over the event that we're feeling guilty for. And every time we have this image or think of something bad that, we regret, then that fuels more guilt. So this emotion just spirals and spirals. And before we know it, we've been feeling guilty for 2 hours rather than that 90 seconds. So the ability to regulate emotions actually helps reduce suffering. And if we think about the difference between the pain of a primary emotion and suffering, is that a primary emotion is that chemical response in the body that lasts 90 seconds that we can't always prevent if an emotion comes up. But the thing we do have some control over is that suffering. So that's when we judge our emotions, when we try and do other coping behaviors, which makes our emotions worse in the long run. I'm feeling so anxious that I'm drinking more, but then I get a hangover and then I feel worse the next day and I'm more vulnerable to emotions. And if we can mindfully observe emotions, so doesn't mean we have to like them, doesn't mean we have to want them, but it just means acknowledging this sensation is here in this moment, being aware when our mind tries to jump into those thoughts, trying to bring in all those memories of other events that, increase that suffering. If we can just stay with what is in the moment, it's just a sensation. Sensation in the body doesn't mean we need to automatically react. That being able to do this mindfulness and then consciously choose, okay, what is this message trying to tell me? How can I use this wisely? Do I need to act on this emotion? Or maybe I need to do something else like distraction or self-soothe or express myself. So that's what emotion regulation looks like. And we can co-regulate with other people. Sometimes if you've had a difficult date, you might, go out for a drink with your friend and you tell them all about it and you feel better. They laugh with you, they give you a hug. And it's also really helpful to be able to regulate your own emotions because other people aren't always going to be available. And also no one else is living the exact life that you are. And people will intentionally or unintentionally invalidate you at times. And you'll feel not heard, you'll feel dismissed, or you'll feel confused. You'll get conflicting advice or information from different friends. So the ability to tell yourself, it's okay, I understand this emotion makes sense. What can I do right now? And be able to have that self-soothing, that self-regulation is so helpful. You will feel more in control, you'll feel more powerful, and it will help you in dating because inevitably when difficult emotions come up in dating, you'll have that toolbox. You'll know what to do when that emotion arrives. And it's your emotion. No one else can create that emotion in your body. Other people can trigger it when we're dating, but our body is the one that makes the emotion. And often it's to do with our own thought patterns or the way we interpret a situation. So the more we can be mindful and notice that, the more we can reduce that unnecessary suffering. Okay, so I've jumped around a little bit, but I'm going to go step by step what it might look like to regulate emotions. So first of all, think of emotion regulation like a guidebook or like how to for different emotions. You're feeling guilty and you go to the contents page and you're like, okay, guilt. And then you go to that chapter and then you know exactly what to do when you get that emotion in your body. So the first step is to do a bit of research on what are emotions. We talked a bit about how they're a chemical reaction, 90 seconds in the body. Have some research about why we get them. And in dialectical behavior therapy, they talk about 3 main reasons. 1, it helps motivate behavior. If I feel just like apathetic, I'm not going to get up and go protest. I need to feel something. I need to feel anger or excitement to get me up to go do that activity. In dating, if I'm going to ask someone on a date, I need some emotion to help me with that. It could be excitement. It could be fear-based. Oh no, I'm not going to meet someone. Generally, it's better if we can motivate ourselves with a more pleasant emotion rather than fear-based, but sometimes that's how it starts. The second reason why we get emotions is to communicate to others. So have you ever had it where maybe you're on a date and someone's like saying all these things like they're extroverted and laughing a lot, but you can tell from their body language that they are so nervous, right? So we can tell a lot from someone's emotions. It comes out through facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, how fast or slow they speak, that whether or not someone wants to show it, the emotions do come through. Or if someone's really good at masking, it can be a problem because then people don't actually know how they're truly feeling about a situation. And then the third reason why we get emotions is to communicate to ourselves. Have you ever had it where you knew in your gut that you couldn't see a future with someone, but your head was like, well, they tick all the boxes, so I should just keep giving it a try, and you've gone on too many dates well past when your gut is saying, no, I can't do this anymore, I'm just not feeling it. So sometimes we can have a mismatch between what our brain's saying or what we think other people think we should do and what our emotions are telling us. So our emotions can give us vital information, and it's confusing because sometimes they can be misleading. Sometimes, we can be flooded with fear when someone shows lots of interest because we're not used to it, when actually it can be something that could be really beneficial for us. So it's really good to learn your emotions and be able to understand them. Okay, so you've understood what emotions are, why we get them, And then the third step is to be able to actually identify your own emotions, start to notice patterns. And we're talking about in dating here, you can start to look at, well, what are some key emotions that are troubling me at the moment? Is it dating anxiety? Is it just feeling apathetic? Is it feeling hopeless? What is it? What emotions are coming up for you? Notice the sensations in the body. Notice the cluster of thoughts that come with it. And notice what behavior that emotion drives you to do. It can be really helpful to keep a journal. And once you've identified what emotion it is you're feeling, we're needing to weigh up the present goal versus your long-term goal, what connects to your long-term values. So, for example, I might be feeling really tired on the weekend and I just want to cancel that date. And you have two options here. One, you can go with short-term, how you're feeling, and generally we want to seek pleasure, avoid pain. So it might feel a bit aversive to muster up the energy to get dressed, to get out of the house. And we've got to balance this with our long-term goals of, I know I want to meet someone and maybe I want kids and I need to meet them in a certain time frame, or maybe I'm just really ready for that relationship. And it might be worth feeling a bit of fatigue or discomfort to get to that long-term goal. And we don't know. Sometimes you might be really tired and it might be better to postpone the date and have a sleep and go at it, go on the date another week. But if you're noticing that's a pattern and you keep cancelling, maybe it's actually needing to push yourself and look at that long-term value. To regulate emotions, you can also look at different factors which make you more vulnerable to experiencing emotion dysregulation. This is things such as self-care. If I haven't slept all night and I've skipped breakfast and lunch and I haven't seen my friends in months, and then I go to uni and they're like, surprise, you've got an exam, I'm going to feel so stressed and overwhelmed. Compared to I've had really nice sleep, 9 hours. I saw my friends the night before. It was really fun. And I've had all meals that day. And then I go to class and they're like, you have an exam. I might still feel stressed, but I'm not going to feel such intense dysregulation of the emotions. So thinking about sleep, diet, exercise, social supports, and doing activities where you get a sense of enjoyment, mastery, or pleasure. Other things that can lead to vulnerability to emotions is the larger context. So housing situations, do you have other stresses in your life like work? Maybe you're lacking certain skills that would be super helpful in dating, knowing how to write messages when you're going on dates, or how to be assertive, or how to manage distress when you get difficult emotions in dating. All these things can help you to manage and regulate emotions. The other thing I recommend might be helpful for you is to practice mindfulness skills. It's quite a buzzword, but if we are practicing meditations or practicing being present in the moment without judging, being able to redirect our attention back to the here and now, this helps you identify and notice when you have an emotion coming up rather than automatically reacting to that emotion. Before you know it, there's been a circumstance and then you're just acting. And you haven't seen that bit in the middle where there's a bit of sense of control. The other thing that can be useful is to look up what the function of emotions is. Get to understand it. Have you ever wondered, what is the function of boredom? I wondered that and I researched it the other day. So boredom can actually be a really useful emotion. This occurs when we're not being overwhelmed with too much stimuli. And we live in a world which is saturated with distraction, overstimulation. If we are bored, This helps our mind relax, not be too overwhelmed. And they've shown that we can actually recharge this way. It can help us focus later down the track more easily, or help us be more creative later down the track. That having moments of boredom is actually really useful as humans. Have you ever wondered what the difference between guilt and shame is? Guilt is when you're feeling like you've stepped out of line of your behaviors or your moral compass. So if you've accidentally kind of got really angry and called your friend some name and you feel guilty, it tells you, I value respect and that connection with that friend, and it motivates you to apologize. If we feel shame, that's telling you stepped out of line of the moral compass of society. I might be with a group of friends and I've been on a date with, a friend of a friend in that group. And maybe I'm being a bit judgmental, a bit mean when I'm describing the date with them. And then one of my friends pulls me up and say, hey, that's not very kind. And maybe people look at me in the group and I feel shame. My cheeks get red and I kind of look down. This shame is telling me, I value that moral in society of kindness, of respect, of not talking behind someone's back, and that shame then motivates me to not do that behavior again. So really learning, why do we get these emotions? They might feel uncomfortable, but they do serve a purpose. And then you might like to look at other DBT skills of knowing when it's helpful to act on an urge of emotion. There's a skill called opposite action, which is when it's not so helpful to act on the urge of an emotion, and being able to tell the difference between these two. And lastly, a tip is don't try and regulate every single emotion all at once. If you're struggling in dating with lots of intense emotions, pick the most troublesome one or two and really get to know those emotions, research about them, learn your patterns of behavior, practice mindful meditations related to those specific emotions. I love the app Insight Timer where you can do free meditations. There's a paid version as well. I just use the free one. And you can type in anything there, like meditation for guilt. And people just upload different meditations. They've got ratings, and you could do a meditation on that. Or you could look on YouTube or, wherever your favorite meditations are. But that can be really useful to practice dealing with the emotion before it even comes up. Okay, everyone, have a lovely morning or a lovely evening or lunchtime, wherever you are in the world, and I will speak with you all next week.